Is in. Thank you, everybody. We have today Krista Nutorf. She works at Intel as a finance now marketing, and she'll discuss or tell us about her career. But before that, let's do a little housekeeping. And if you have been here before, you know the drill. We have to do a check-in so that everybody knows that your teacher knows that you're here in this event. And we have a great questions document. And more importantly, the evaluation form. The evaluation form is very important. So you have to do it right after the event. Be fully present, ask question, do not play with your phone. And again, submit your evaluation. That is your attendance, and that's for us to give you credit, and you'll need that to graduate. And that is all for me. I'll have Krista do the share.
Okay, awesome. Let me share. Great to meet everyone. All right. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Krista Nutor, and I am here to share with you about my career journey, how I switched from finance to marketing, and kind of what I learned along the way from my journey. So here's how we are planning to break it up. I'm going to share a little bit about me so you know who you're talking to. And then I'm going to give a little bit of a background on finance and marketing as it relates to my experience. We'll have some key takeaways and resources at the end, and then we'll have we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. But if you have questions along the way, I'll pause and I'll look and I'll get some questions in the chat too, so feel free to send questions in the chat along the way. So let's get started. A little bit about me. So first of all, I am from Columbus, Ohio, born and raised. So I am a Buckeye fan by birth. So if you're a Ducks fan in here, I'm so sorry. Please do not hate me. I had no control over where I was born. But both of my parents are from Ghana, West Africa, which is something that I'm really proud of. I did end up leaving Ohio to go to school in Atlanta, Georgia, at a school called Emory University. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Has anyone heard of it before? No? Okay. Emory University, I'd highly encourage you to look into that school if you're at that point in your high school journey. It's one of the top 20 universities in the country. They have really, really strong programs in business and also medicine. So like when Ebola was a thing, they treated it there, and a lot of like top diseases. So really great school. Anyways, that's where I went to school. Currently, was mentioned earlier, I work at Intel. I've been in finance for a majority of the time, about 5 years. But currently I am in social media strategy in the marketing area, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. I will say that I am a champion of diversity and inclusion because of how it affects me, but also because I want to make sure that everyone feels like they have a place to belong. I'm actually on the board of directors for a nonprofit that helps Black and Brown college students get resources they need while they're in college. And outside of that, I think the main thing that I want to highlight is I absolutely love to write. So I put my work out there pretty much every week for over 4,000 people. So that is me. And let's talk about my career a little bit. So here is an in-depth story of my career journey. In 1994, a legend was born. And I'm not talking about John Legend or his son Miles. I'm talking about me, obviously. And growing up, I wanted to be on the red carpet. I thought I could be an actor or a singer until I realized I couldn't do either of those well. So instead, I started looking on the screen to kind of see what I wanted to be. And I started to see a lot of like boss women on the screen. And one of them that I love and I still love is Gabrielle Union. You might know her as the basketball player Dwayne Wade's wife or Zaya's stepmom, but I know her as my favorite character from the Bring It On franchise and from a movie that should be more iconic called Deliver Us from Eva. And in this movie, she plays Eva. And she's a no nonsense businesswoman who maybe comes off as a little overbearing, but she's a boss who gets things done and looks out for everyone around her. And I didn't want to be quite as intense as her, but still, I was still really inspired by her confidence and her command of the room. And that was just really inspirational for me. So characters like her really like illustrated for me that maybe I do want to become a businesswoman and be this kind of woman. So in 2012, I went to college at Emory, like I mentioned earlier, and I went to college for business. Now, I know I skipped through my high school stages, which I know is the place that most of you are at right now. And that's because I really want us to focus on what's ahead and what we could look forward to. But I also want to note, don't get me wrong, I worked really hard in high school. You know, I got the straight A's, I played sports, I was in the National Honor Society. But I also want to encourage you, if that's not your story, that's okay. Keep working really hard, believe in yourself. Things can and still work out for you. So just wanted to throw that out there. But let's look forward and go back to college. So when I got to business school, I took something like a personality test for career, and I found out that marketing was a really good career fit for me. It was just a good mix of analytics and the creativity that I craved. So once I graduated, I took my last summer off ever, which, unless you stay in education, people don't tell you that after college, that's your last summer off before you start work. So I took advantage of that. And then I began my 5-year plan. I created a 5-year plan because I wanted to be the chief marketing officer of a company one day. And so I created a plan that I thought would help me get there. There was a twist. That path would start with me being a finance analyst. Now, how did we get here? How does that make sense? Well, I was presented by a mentor of mine with a finance opportunity in Portland at Intel, and I almost didn't apply because it didn't seem to align with my long-term goals. But what I learned about this thing called transferable skills, meaning that there were skills that I had that I could apply to finance that would actually make me stand out in that career, but also would help me along the way when I stepped back into my marketing career. Because what I figured out was that every marketing executive has their own budget and they need to know how to run it really well in order to do well in their job. So I figured I might as well get a head start and really understand how to do finance and budgeting before diving into my marketing career. So I made the plan to be a finance analyst for about 4 years, become as good as I could before like being a manager or something, and then make a switch to marketing in that 5th year. So that was my 5-year plan in 2017. But I will say I never lost sight of my marketing dreams along the way. I still practiced. I blogged, like I mentioned earlier, I love to write. I did some freelance social media work just to make sure that I would keep those skills sharp, even as I was in the finance world. And so that's something I want to remind you of too. Even if you're not sure what you want to do or you have little passion projects, still keep doing those things and building those skill sets no matter where you are. And so it was working great for me until 2019 when I almost forgot the plan. And that's what I like to call my reckoning. I took a finance job that was not a good fit, and it was honestly just too financy. I forgot that my plan was not to become like the best finance expert. It was to get all this transferable skills I needed to move into that next phase. And so this new job didn't have that skill set that I originally was excited about. It was it was a just completely different kind of finance skill set. And I had the realization that a change needed to happen as soon as possible. So I got out of that job by 2021 and was able to leverage my network and explore marketing roles, which finally landed me this gig in social media. Now, there's obviously still more to my story. I'm not a CMO yet. And like Natasha Bedingfield sings, the rest is still unwritten. Now, if you don't know, just a quick break, if you don't know who Natasha Bedingfield is, it's probably because I'm older than you, but I wanted to show you really quick who she was, because she's great. One second. Let's see if this works. And if not, the link is in the PowerPoint. We'll just move on, but click on it when I send out the deck. It's there was a challenge that happened I think on TikTok earlier this year, where there was a unwritten dance challenge, which was really fun. So we'll move on, but she's great. So I mentioned transferable skills earlier, and here are some of the main ones that I wanted to highlight for you. Now, they might look a little bit basic at face value, but I promise you that if you master these, you can do almost anything. So the first thing is communication, both verbal and nonverbal, right? Learn how to be a strong communicator, speak powerfully and concisely, and be able to connect with people through your words and your actions. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of nonverbal communication because it's not something you actually say, but it's how you portray yourself. It's the eye contact, the handshake, all of those things build up and tie into your communication capability, and it's really, really important. The next thing is analysis, being able to tell a story with data. Almost every job nowadays, no matter what you do, has some kind of data involved. So it's important to be able to tell a narrative with the data. Otherwise, it's just numbers that don't mean anything. You have to be able to put all those things together and be able to make some meaning out of it. And then there's influence. Now, influence is kind of tied to communication, but it also has to do with your network. Meet as many people as you can, including like your boss and your boss's boss, and whatever that may look like. You can do this in any kind of job. If you have a summer job or if you have a corporate job, whatever it looks like, really get to know the people around you. And don't be shy about sharing your dreams and your plans, right? The more that you share those things, the more people actually might be looking out for you, and they'll remember what it is that you told them. And then in your day-to-day job, you kind of find what those priority areas are for them. What's the vision of who you're working for? What's the mission? What's the thing that the goals that they're trying to accomplish that year? Once you get that, you can kind of find a way to help solve those problems and become the star of the show and actually be able to have some influence to help shape decisions along the way. So those are good things to ask about and find out. And that moves me to the next one about curiosity. Ask questions always. It will always get you ahead in life. So stay curious and don't hold back. Okay. So it moves me to this quote, which I thought was really fitting. It says, plans are nothing, but planning is everything. So I wanted to pause for a second and see if anyone wanted to go off mute or put it in the comments of what do you think that this quote means? Any takers?
For me, I think like plans is like, plans can change, but planning, like continuing planning is more important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so much. Yep, I think that's exactly right. Plans can change. However, success is the residue of planning, meaning it's kind of the output of planning well, and being prepared. That those things just really set you up for success, even in the midst of change. And that's something that I've learned along the way with my story as well. So let's move into a little sneak peek of the finance and the marketing roles that I've been able to be a part of. Okay, starting with finance. So like I mentioned, I was a finance analyst for 4 to 5 years. And these were some of the core responsibilities that I got to manage. So the first thing is what we would call a monthly close. And what that means is kind of closing the books, ensuring that all the pieces of information, all the data, all the journal entries that happened within that month were accounted for and reflected accurately in the balance sheet and the income statement. So there's a lot of cash that comes in, there's a lot of cash that comes out, and there's a lot that happens in between. So we want to have a regular checkpoint, and we do this on a monthly basis to make sure that everything is in order and that the statements that we publish out to Wall Street and all of that are reflecting our spending environment accurately, and that if there's anything that was missed or a mistake, that we can catch that by the end of the month. So this is a core part of a finance analyst job, is really getting into the details and understanding the data and making sure that it's as accurate as possible. Another thing is quarterly forecasting. So this is something that we do about every 3 months or so. This is where we set the target, we set the budget for the future. So monthly close is kind of more real time. Let's check as we go. Quarterly forecasting is setting a budget in the future. This could be something, the future could be short term, as in where do we want to hit by the end of the year? Or it could be long term, saying where do we want to be in the next 5 years down the line. Now, if you can imagine, technology is ever changing. Back in high school, my cell phone was like this thick, it was a brick, and it had an antenna. Like, it was very embarrassing, actually. But now, now things have changed drastically, and it wasn't that long ago. And so things are happening really quickly. And so trying to predict the future and the financial implications of all the future decisions is not a simple task. And so there's an art to it and a science behind it, and a lot of analysis that goes into that. So that's a big process that we take on about every quarter, just to get it as close as possible as we can. The next thing that I would say that has to do with the finance analyst job is affordability. And what we mean by that is really looking for a way to save the coins, to save money. Is there something that we could do less of and cut back on, or can we push out the timing of it so that it doesn't create like a really big spike, right? There's a lot of different things that we have to think about of how to make things more affordable so that we can meet our target, right? We set the budget, we want to meet the budget. And so how do we do that? Or how do we even go below the budget and save money? So those are really big topics, and it really allows you to use your imagination, to think outside the box. What are some things that we can implement, some new things that we can introduce to really get us and hit that bottom line? The next thing is business partnership. So a lot of people might think that finance is, a finance analyst is someone who's in like a cube somewhere with glasses, hunched over their computer, and doesn't talk to anyone. But that's not necessarily the case. Yes, I have glasses, and yes, I'm always on my computer, but I also have the great opportunity to be able to partner with so many people. And this is something that's so special about this job, is being able to meet with people with a whole lot of different backgrounds and experiences and expertise, and just coming together and making things happen, and going back to that transferable skill of influence, like actually influencing change within an organization, within the future of technology, et cetera. It's probably my favorite part of the job. Um, and then process improvement. So we talked about ways that we can save money, but this is ways that we can save time. Time is valuable. Time is money, honestly. And so what are ways that we can make systems faster and automate things so that we can just move towards a more efficient environment? So those are some of the main pillars that we work towards in a finance analyst capacity. I would say we were to boil it down into a few things, it's accuracy, excellence, efficiency. Those are the things that we strive for in the finance world. You have to be detail oriented, people focused, and future minded, always thinking about the decisions you make and how they affect the future, while also looking for ways to get better and more automated and save more time and money. So I wanted to show an example of what this looks like, and we can play in Excel. So hopefully the link works this time. Give me 1 second to figure it out. Okay. So we talked about the monthly close process, right? And what we take a lot of data and we try to look to see what we spent for that month and how we reconcile it to make sure it's accurate. This is a slightly simplified version of what that would look like. So we can pull an Excel spreadsheet from our database that tells us, okay, this is the month that you spent money. This is the account that the money hit. And we have like numerical codes to kind of know what the account is, but we're humans, and we also have like more plain language to describe what each code means, to know what category it falls in. We know the date that it hit, and then we also know the currency. And this is something interesting because Intel's a global company. So we are everywhere and we get money from everywhere. And so we want to make sure that we're accounting it correctly. So the euro doesn't weigh the same as the US dollar, doesn't weigh the same as the yen, and so forth and so on. And so we just really want to make sure that we're using the right currency as we're looking through our data. Otherwise, our numbers will be off. And then we also look at the document line description, which is really just explaining in further detail what this specific cost is for. So some of these won't make sense because they use their own language and system, but we have COVID cost, we have compensation, thermal stuff, right, to keep things going. There's just a lot of different categories that people submit spending for. And then on this column over here, we have the actual dollars associated with it. So what we would do is instead of going through line by line and trying to figure out what's happening, we would pivot the data and create a pivot table. And this is just an example of the pivot table that we would create. So if we wanted to get specific and say, what did we spend in October? Then I would, I pulled in all the information I wanted here for the pivot table fields. And I'm like, okay, let's filter. Let's filter on, let's change it to September. How much did we spend in September? And then we can look at the GL account, right? The account that it hit, and say, do I just want to look at COVID benefits, or do I want to look at any of these other things, or all, right? You can select what you want. So if I were to look at COVID for September, then these are the total dollars that we spent for this particular group. This is not an all Intel sheet, but this is just part of it. But yeah, okay, we spent $34,000. And then from there, I can do deeper analysis of, is $34,000 what we were expecting? Is it more? Is it less? Who do I need to talk to get to the bottom of it? So I don't want to bore you with all these Excel details, but I did want to kind of give you a little hint of what we would do in our close process and kind of how we would get that started. Okay, so let me pause for a second. Are there any questions on this finance portion before I move to marketing?
Do you think the high school students, and I also forgot to mention that we have middle school students,
Awesome.
8th grade, and it was nice to know that you have this plan. That's why kind of like we want to include them so that they can also plan ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is that should they study Excel now that they're in high school on top of their subject?
Yes, good question. I would say yes. It's such a good skill to have. And I didn't really start using it until college, but if you get to know more about it ahead of time, you have a head start and you have less of a learning curve when you start college and when you do that. So actually at the end of the deck, I have some resources and I have like an Excel training linked there for people to be able to check out. So yes, I would highly recommend it. It's fun. Excel can do almost anything you want it to do. It's like magic. So I would definitely recommend learning Excel. It's not going anywhere. It's definitely part of the future of finance still.
We have, oh, sorry.
No,
we
go.
have two
Please.
questions in the chat.
Yeah.
What education or training is required for that career?
Ooh, okay. So typically what they would look for is some sort of business degree or accounting degree. And so you can go as far as your MBA, or if you're in accounting, you can get certified in that and get your CPA. However, like I mentioned earlier, anything is possible. When I got my business degree, my focus was actually in marketing and strategy and not in finance, right? Like I said, I wanted to be a CMO. But I was able to utilize the basic like business understanding that I got in business school to still leverage that in this finance career. So ideally you have a business degree focused in finance, or you have an accounting degree. But if you are able to understand some of the basics and take some business classes, that could really like make a strong case for you to be in this, that's possible as well.
Okay, I think that's all for right now.
Okay, great. Thanks for asking questions. Keep asking away. Okay, so marketing. Let's get into it. So my example for marketing is in the social media field. Obviously, that is not all inclusive of marketing, but I'll just tell you about the day in my life right now. So you might be thinking that, okay, we're done with numbers, we're done with let's go on to the easy stuff. But I would actually say that there's still a lot of work that has to be done in this space. I'm assuming that most of you have social media, so you might think it's just about posting cute photos with witty captions that get lots of likes, but it's actually, there's actually a lot more to it. And there's a lot more planning that goes around social media, especially when you're working with corporate accounts. So first thing I'll say is you have to pay attention, right? You have to stay alert to the trends and the updates and the features that are happening on the different platforms. Instagram, for example, has Instagram Reels and a collaboration feature and IGTV and all these different things. And so you have to pay attention to what's changing with the platform, right? And how, and TikTok has all these trends, right? And these dance challenges and all this stuff. What are the trends that we need to pay attention to and adapt to? The other thing I would say is strategize, right? So we have to plan and strategize for what the best social approach is for our everyday moments, but then also our big moments. So we have like our everyday moments is like always being on. We're always posting things no matter what. But then we also have those big campaigns and events that happen. So we actually had a campaign recently with Jamie Foxx and his daughter Corinne. And Jamie Foxx, if you know who that is, you might be thinking, okay, so that's the guy from the Django movie, and he has that song with T-Pain. Yes, that is correct. And we had to figure out, how does that match? How does his career and his personality match with Intel? How can we make that like work so that we can have the best of both worlds? And so there's a lot of planning and thinking and strategizing that goes along with trying to do big campaigns like that. So that's just one example. And then research and analysis. So I have the fun job of being able to scroll through social media for a living. I get to, obviously there's more to it like we just talked about, but I actually get to scroll through and listen and see what the kids are doing, what you all are doing, and take insights from that of, okay, this is how we should approach it, or this maybe won't work for our target audience. And so just market research really allows a company to discover their target market and get opinions and other feedback from consumers about their interest in the product or service. So we're doing that research, we're listening, we're doing the analysis to make sure that we can apply things correctly for our brand and our company. One thing that I really love too is being able to add perspective. Like I get to add a point of view for the company that allows with the brand, right? I can say yes to things and no to things, and kind of shape our image in a way. And what you all see when you're scrolling through Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and TikTok even. So it's really, really cool in that way, where you get to help shape a company's branded image in a way and make sure that it aligns with who they are. And then I wanted to also say we still get to be creative. We get to have fun and discover new things and try out new things and just find fun ways to engage with social. So that is a little bit of what a day in the life is for a social media strategist. And I wanted to show you an example, like I did for finance, of what of a recent big event that we had last month. It was called Intel Innovation, and we had to create a social media strategy for that. So I wanted to give you a little peek into what that was like. So this is another table. So like I said, the event was in October, but we started planning for this in August or even before that, which is wild. It was only a 2-day event, by the way. But there's just so much that goes into it that you might not even like think about. So one, we had to think about live streaming the event, right? Like we wanted to make sure that people could tune in and view it. We wanted to see which platform should we do? Should we do Twitter? Should we do LinkedIn? Should we do both? Then we had to say, do we want this to be a sponsored post, like an ad, or do we want this to be something that's organic and lives on their profile in the feed, right? We wanted to think about we have a lot of social media handles that we could use. Which one do we want to use? Which one fits best? Do we want to have influencers for this that promote the event? How do we do community engagement? What are we going to comment? When are we going to comment? Are we going to do like giveaways and things of that nature? And so, I mean, that's all stuff that we have to figure out before and make sure that it's like tight and that we don't mess it up. And then during the event, we're actually streaming and amplifying any news and announcement that comes out and just go, go, go. And then after the event, we're, driving people to the replay. Hey, if you missed it, go. You can go to this link to do it. And here's some clips and videos of what you may have missed. And we thank the influencers and we continue to drive conversations around it. And then we get a report that tells us how we did as well. And so that is just a little bit of what it looks like to plan an event. It is a long, long process with a lot of different components. And I mentioned the report. So this is we did all that work, and then this is some of the results that we got to see. 9.4 million people viewed this event. It was huge. And this is, again, why there's so much planning that has to be involved, because we know that there are eyes watching. It was mentioned about almost 11,000 times. There was 32,000 engagements. It just ended up being a really big event. We had, these are some of our top posts with our CEO and then with a big announcement that we made. And I included this one too, because we talked about trends, right? And so there was that red flag trend that happened on Twitter a couple months back. And so we took advantage of that. We decided that was one of the trends we wanted to lean into. And so we did this as a pre-event trend of, okay, if you're a tech developer that's not attending this event, red flag for you, right? And so it was a little cheesy, but we did it and it worked. So so this is kind of the end result of the planning that happened for the social media strategy. Any questions there? Wow, thanks. I wanted to kind of pull this all together and talk about some key takeaways, right? So we talked about planning a lot, making a plan, setting goals for yourself. Mine was /is to become a CMO one day, right? Chief Marketing Officer. Yours might be really different, but make a plan to know, to kind of set out how you want to get there, whether it's like going to college and what you want to do in college, what kind of activities you want to be a part of, and maybe what a job will look like, right? Maybe an internship even during high school if you can, right? What are some of those or volunteer opportunities? Like what are some of those things that you can tap into that can help build out your plan? And honestly, it's a time for exploration as well. If you don't know what it is you want to do, which at 10 years old, I thought I wanted to be a singer. Lord knows I can't sing, right? So you can explore things and figure out what you want to do along the way. And so make a plan. And that brings me to the next point, which might sound contradictory, but I think by now you know that it's not. It's being open to change, right? Yes, you make a plan, but be open to change. You can't control everything. So make a plan and hold it loosely. Like the quote that we read earlier, plans can change, but it's planning that makes you better and that leads to success. So be willing to go with the plan and be willing to go with the flow and adjust as things come your way. Another thing I wanted to highlight is finding a mentor. And mentors help a lot. It was a mentor that introduced me to this opportunity at Intel. It was a mentor who I had kept telling for years and years and years that I wanted to eventually go to marketing, who eventually flagged an opportunity for me and was like, oh, there's something out there. I remember you said you were interested in this, right? Mentors can really play a significant part of your journey. So find someone, even now, that you can look up to, preferably someone who is in some kind of position that you admire, and then meet with them regularly. Ask them like, hey, would you mind being a mentor for me? Do you mind meeting monthly or once every few months? Just so that we can chat through some things and, have an agenda, ask them questions, give them updates on your journey and what you're thinking about what you want to do with your life. And then ask them for help. Honestly, that's what they're there for. And I'm sure they have a lot of valuable things that they can offer you. So find a mentor. And then the last takeaway here is just keep your eyes open. Look around you. You never know what's around. Try new things. There's so much good that can come out of that, of keeping your eyes peeled as you are open to change. So those are some of the key takeaways that I wanted to share with you. And as promised, I also have some resources. So the first one is me. Feel free to reach out to me, to connect with me. You might not have a LinkedIn, which I'm now realizing, but this handy dandy next link actually tells you how to create one. And I think it's important to do, especially like towards the end of high school, beginning of college, because it's just a really helpful way to kind of create a brand, see what's out there, connect with people, maybe find some mentors. So that's a great way to connect with people. I can provide my email address as well, now that I'm realizing people probably don't have LinkedIn at the moment, but I'll provide that to the host here. But yeah, you could feel free to connect with me and ask me any questions or anything like that. But also, yeah, start thinking about like networking and branding as well. Each of these links, by the way, link to a LinkedIn learning course. I think anyone can have access to that, or you can at least create a LinkedIn profile just to get the learning aspect out of it, because there are thousands of courses online on that platform that you can start learning about things, and even getting like certifications and things. So I linked some here for Excel that can teach you how to do pivot tables, like we talked about, I got to show you a little bit earlier. But there's also other capabilities that can teach you how to do. Power BI is also a Microsoft tool like Excel is, but it's more visual, and it's more automated. So like it just makes things happen a lot quicker. And so when I think about the future of finance, I don't see Excel going away, but I see people leaning into Power BI a lot more. So if that's something that you're interested in figuring out and just learning the tool, that's a really fun one to learn. And then data storytelling, like we talked about earlier. How do you like provide a narrative with the data? Like, how do you put that all together, right? And then some marketing tools as well are linked here, just for general marketing, but also social media, like we talked about earlier with strategy. So hopefully these links can be helpful for you. And that is honestly all I had for you today. Thank you so much for your time. And I am going to leave it open for Q&A. Please ask questions.
So my question is about the planning. When you created your plan, was it like in a paper, or was it this is on your thoughts that, okay, this is what I want to have, or like how did you create your plan?
Yeah. I did write it down, not on a piece of paper, but in a Google Doc, because I didn't want to lose it. But I did actually write it down, and I just kept adjusting it, right? So it's like, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years? And then I worked backward. I'm like, what do I think I need for that? And I talked to mentors and I was like, does this make sense? Is there anything that's missing? So I did actually write it down, and I tried to be detailed, but not too detailed to the point that it was going to limit me from actually being able to make moves, right? So I think it's finding that balance of like, here are some options of what it could look like versus this is the only way that it can look like. Yeah.
So we have some question on the chat. What does your day-to-day work like?
So I think in the slides, I kind of showed like what my responsibilities look like for each kind of role, but I think day to day, it really just varies. We're in a working from home environment, so I just try to balance my home and work life the best that I can. And work typically starts at 8 a.m. and ends around 5 p.m. With a lunch break in between. And I have a lot of meetings throughout my day. But then I also create like block off time so that I can just do work, like, do things that need to get done, which is actually really important because otherwise people just like set up meetings all the time. So I have to intentionally block off time for that. And then I also dedicate about 10% of my time to do networking and other things to continue to build out my network. So that is, I don't know if that's as specific as the question was, but that's what my day-to-day typically looks like.
What do you like most about your job, and what do you like least?
Ooh. I think for this social media job, I really love the fact that I can see immediate results for the work that I do. So like if we like dream up, a campaign or a post or something, we can actually see it be delivered in like the matter of a day or a week or something like that. Like we see it, we scroll it, we see the results of it. And I think in finance, maybe that wasn't the case as much. Like you're planning more long term, so you don't see the results right away. So you have to be okay with that. And so I think I prefer seeing things right away. And what do I not like? I think the fact that even though I absolutely love working from home, I don't get to interact with people as much, like face to face. So I'm not really loving that part because I think that both in finance and marketing, there's a lot of like brainstorming that needs to be done. And so like you want to write on a whiteboard or like bounce off each other and feel the energy in the room. And you can't do that as well over a phone call. So I think those are some things.
So far we don't have any question yet, but the one that I was thinking when you were doing the finance, did you feel like, since it was not your first kind of like choice, right? Like of your plan, did you feel like hopeless, or like it's like, oh, when am I gonna be my the CMO?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think starting off, I felt imposter syndrome. So feeling like maybe this is, maybe I don't belong here. What am I doing? Maybe I'm in over my head. And that felt overwhelming because there was just a lot to learn at once, and it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't my preferred area. And so kind of having to find the motivation and remember what the end goal was really important to keep me going, as well as connecting with people that could like on my team that could just like make me excited and make it more real, right? Like I'm dealing with people, this is to support you and help you, and it makes me want to do it more. So I think, I think that's kind of how it worked out for me. I would definitely advise to, if there's a straightforward path to do what you want to do it. And if there's like a workaround that you have to do, like I did, where I started off in finance and then moved to marketing, just keep your end goal in mind. I talked about the reckoning that I had in 2019, and how I realized, oh shoot, I'm starting to veer off from the plan and what my end goal is. That's not super fun, and that's like a big learning. So the more that you can just keep front of mind what your end goal is and keep marching towards that and making sure the decisions you make align with that, the better.
So we have a question from Jennifer. What's your plan for the next year coming up?
Oh, Jennifer, that's a good question. I am figuring that out. It's really interesting. That's the thing about planning, as I made a 5-year plan and now I'm in the 5th year, and it's like, oh, I guess I need to create another 5-year plan, or I need to like do this all over again. So I'm in the process of figuring out what the next year or 5 years looks like for me, and kind of building that out to help me to get to my end goal. But I do think in the next year I'll still be in the social media strategy role. It's a newer role for me, so I really want to master it. And yeah, good question.
So you mentioned like 5-year plan. Does it have to be a 5-year plan? I mean, what is the 5-year plan kind of thing?
It doesn't have to be a 5-year plan. I think that's something that's just the time range that's thrown out a lot, because it's kind of short term, but it's not super long term. And so it feels like a happy medium. And I think it works too when you're in school, because 4 years is typically like 4 years is high school, 4 years is college. And so you can kind of say, this is where I want to be at that next right after I graduate, and this is how I'm going to get there. So I do like 5 years for that reason. I think it helped me in the corporate space as well, because people typically stay in jobs for about 2 years or so. So it helps me navigate like, okay, here are like the 2 or 3 jobs that I want to get, I want to aim towards. And so it wasn't so far out where I was like, okay, these are the 10 jobs I need to get in the next, 10, 20 years. Instead, I could just say, okay, what's the next 2 that I want? And go from there. So it just feels a lot more manageable. But it can be a 1-year plan, it can be a 6-month plan. Plan for what makes sense for you.
And there's a question on how much money does this career provide at the end?
There are, if you go to like Indeed.com or something, it can tell you like the average salary. Finance is a really good paying job. It's a really stable job too. Like we always need finance, like money is not going anywhere. So it does pay pretty well. It's, starting off, you'll be like, I don't know, probably somewhere from 60 to 80K, and then it'll just keep growing from there. And then I don't know the numbers top of mind for marketing, since I didn't start off in that, but it's also pretty good.
So going back on what you mentioned, imposter syndrome. I think I'm not sure if high school students or even middle school know the term. Can you elaborate more on what is the imposter syndrome and how do you overcome it?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is when it's pretty much when you show up in an environment that you don't feel like you belong in, and you start to really feel like you start to shrink back because you don't feel like you have a place there. And so that happens to people in a lot of different settings. Maybe they're starting, a new school or a program that's a little bit more challenging and they don't know how they got in and they're just like, do I even belong here? How do I show up? That's kind of what imposter syndrome feels like. For me, it was, being in finance, being in a tech company, coming from just like a small town in Ohio. And I was like, um, like, how does this work? Like, I feel like I've bit off more than I could chew. And that's imposter syndrome. And how do you overcome it? Um, you know, you I think it maybe looks different for everyone, but I mean, I think one, reminding yourself that you are there because you belong there. Like someone saw your worth and saw what you're capable of and said that you deserve a seat at that table. And so like affirming yourself in that, then also just continuing to show up, right? And prove that voice in your head wrong. And it will happen. You just have to keep at it, and maybe finding some people around you who might be in similar positions where you can kind of stick together and move through it together. So yeah.
There's a question from Yasmin. Do you love your job?
I love my job. I really do. This current job I'm in is the best job that I've had so far. It just feels like a really good fit for my skill set. So I really hope that for everyone that they find something that they love, even if it takes a while. And I would say that even in my previous positions, I still really enjoyed my job and I still felt like what I was doing was meaningful. And honestly, the people that I got to work with made it worth it. So, but right now I can really say I do, I do love my job.
So would you choose this career again, or would you choose, going into that finance job when someone offered it to you, or would you just like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna wait until my plan is aligned?
Oh, good question. Ooh, it's hard because you can't like change the past. But I do think I actually am really happy that I took the path that I did. I don't think I would change it because um, it taught me a lot about business. It taught me a lot about myself and what I really want to do and what I really don't want to do. And I feel like, I was having a meeting with my marketing manager just yesterday, and I was showing him something. He was like, oh my gosh, no one else on my team does it this way or thinks this way. And I was just like, oh, this is something that I got from my finance experience, from my previous experience. And so I think there's a lot of value that I've been able to carry of, having different experiences that I can transfer to new spaces and show them like there's other ways to think about things and also learn new ways to think about things. So I think it's really worked out.
All right, we're coming up with our an hour slot, and if you have any questions, please put it on the chat. If not, we'll have Krista have her lunch. Thank you so much. That's a lot of good information. And students, we will have the PowerPoint at the end of year this week or next
Yes.
week. I know there's a big Thanksgiving is coming up, so we'll have Krista. Just no rush for the presentation link.
You'll get it by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Oh. I know, because I was like, I want the students to I know they were excited for the links that you provided, and
yeah,
for that.
absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.